Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivjakacharya Ashtotoda Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivjakacharya Ashtotoda Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. All righty. Uh-oh, this is, yeah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You don't want a book? 179, page 179. Okay. So on this 13th day of December 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in the last verse of chapter 3, Karma Yoga, on page 179. Buddhe Padam Buddhva Sangstabhyatmanam Atmana Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva Sangstabhyatmanam Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva Sangstabhyatmanam Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva Sangstabhyatmanam Jai Shatrum Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam. Go ahead, Chris. No? Anyone want to try? Go ahead, Nelson. Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva Sangsabhyatmanam Atmana Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam. Anyone else? Keep going. Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva Sangsabhyatmanam Atmana Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam. Anyone else on this side would want to try it? Go ahead. Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva Sangsabhyatmanam Atmana Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam. Go ahead. Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva Sangsabhyatmanam Atmana Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam. Want to try? Okay. Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva Sangsabhyatmanam Atmana Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam. Okay, I'm going to read the word by words by myself. You can just follow along. Evam, thus, Buddhe, to intelligence, Param, superior, Buddhva, knowing, Sangstabhya, by steadying, Atmanam, the mind, Atmana, by deliberate intelligence, Jahi, conquer, Shatrum, the enemy, Mahabaho, almighty armed one, Kamarupam, in the form of lust, Durasadam, formidable. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, almighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Purport. This third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without considering impersonal voidness the ultimate end. In the material existence of life, one is certainly influenced by propensities for lust and desire for dominating the resources of material nature. Desire for overlording and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind, and the intelligence. One may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind, by steady intelligence directed toward one's pure identity. This is the sum total of this chapter. In the immature stage of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yogic postures can never help a man toward spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of karma yoga, or the discharge of one's prescribed duty in Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. Disciplic succession. So this chapter is called Karma Yoga. There's some very important instructions in here. And Krishna begins his instruction. Arjuna has a question, because the chapter 2 ended where Krishna was saying that one should, let's see, Vihaya Kaman. This is very appropriate. It's text 71 of chapter 2, that in order to attain real peace, Vihaya kama nyaksava. Now this word kama is at the end of chapter 3 also. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. And then at the end he says, this is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. So, but giving up all desire for sense gratification, that is a very advanced position. As we grow in this world, this in ordinary life, without, say, training in Krishna consciousness, we are naturally going through different stages in which we're attracted to different objects of the senses. As soon as a child comes out of the womb, immediately he's attracted to the mother, who's the source of all wonderful safety and love and nourishment and everything, right? But as he grows, there are other things, you know, there's other brothers and sisters, there's school, and all kinds of desires develop. So the ordinary situation, especially in this Kali Yuga, where there usually, for the most part, is not formal spiritual training from a young age, is that there's a whole universe of desires that are developed in each one of us. And as we grow, their desires change. What you wanted to do when you were 4 years old, I'll give that up. I'll never do that again. I'm 6 now. You know, I mean, it's just like, goes like that. And so that's how ordinary material life develops. And at the beginning of of Krishna's teachings, at the beginning of the 2nd chapter, the main thrust of it was that we're not the body. Our identity is not this physical body, but rather the soul or the spirit within. He has his famous verse, how can we understand, how can we believe in transmigration of the soul? Well, Krishna tells Arjuna, you've already transmigrated through so many bodies. Dehi nosmin yata dehe, kaumaram yovanang jara, tata dehantara prapti dhiras tattanamuyati. Now the word dhira is important there. One has to be sober-minded and thoughtful, because a lot of this information that we get from the Bhagavad Gita is beyond the ability of us to know by our ordinary scientific method, by using our senses and our material intelligence. It's coming down from a higher source. But here Krishna gives us something that everyone can say, yeah, when I first read this verse, it's like a light going on. You know, it's not difficult to understand, it's that we never think of it that way. So what he's saying is here that as one passes through childhood, or babyhood, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, we're passing through these ages. Every one of us has done that to a certain degree, we're a certain age now. So we can remember those different stages in our life. I like to recall, there's like, my first memory is I'm riding a tricycle. I'm maybe 4 or 5 years old. You know, I can't remember much more that's going on, but that's what I'm doing, you know. And then I had a traumatic experience. I was in the hospital when I was 5. I almost died. So that's really etched in my memory, you know. It was a very high emotional thing. So we're obviously there. We were there. We were conscious. We were interacting with our parents and with our little friends and in the world. So we had a little body. We had a different mind, right? And we're the same person now. We may be, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. I'm just going to turn 76 in a few days. So I'm moving through all of these different stages of the body, and that undoubtedly changes. But I'm the same person. What is it that doesn't change about me? Everything else has changed. My mind has changed, intelligence has changed, my body has changed. So it's the soul. It's the spirit soul. And Krishna has this you know, key verse, Najayate mriyate va kadachan, nayam bhutva bhavitava nabuya. Ajo nitya shastrato yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. For the soul, for the self, there is never birth, never any death. Najayate mriyate va kadachan. There aren't more and more souls being created now and some ceasing to exist. No, we're as eternal as Krishna is. We're uncounted. There's trillions and trillions and quadrillions of us all over the universe and the world everywhere. Anytime you see anything that's sentient, that these trees, you know, when you first come to San Diego, I don't know, those trees were greatly prominent. I didn't see anything like that in Miami. You know, I came from Miami. They had lower trees. But those trees are also living entities. They've been standing like sentinels there for, I don't know, 30, 40 years, whatever it is. And there's a soul in there. Now, the consciousness of such a tree is very rudimentary compared to our consciousness, obviously. And that's a very important point also, that the human form of life is a very rare and fortunate thing to have. Compared to the number of other living entities, you know, when you go by a lawn, I take a walk every day, and sometimes you see there's not that much, you know, a lot of people have stones there because it's hard to water. But there'll be lawns, and every one of those blades of grass is another living entity. There's literally countless. And so we have come through, this is the whole point, it is expressed elsewhere in more detail in Srimad Bhagavatam, that we've come up through all of these different species. And we've now come to the human form of life. It's a gradual uncovering of consciousness. And now, in this human form, we have a chance to end this process. This is a painful process for the soul, to go through and, you know, whatever species we're in, and then to get old and frail and die, and then take birth again and again and again. And human beings, we're eager to get liberation from that. And that's what I like to, you know, call attention, is this big fair that takes place. You can even call it a fair. It's a great gathering called the Kumbh Mela, Magh Mela in Allahabad. And millions and millions and millions of people come, mostly from India, but some come from abroad. Why? Because it's said astrologically, if you take your bath, it's called Triveni there. There's actually 2 rivers that are manifest that meet and one that's unmanifest that meets. The Ganges, famous Ganges is there, the Yamuna, in Krishna Lila, and the Saraswati River. That's the Triveni, the three veins, 3 rivers. And they meet in Allahabad. And all the astrology says if you take your bath at that confluence of those 3 rivers at a certain time, usually in January, it's pretty cold, you'll get liberation. You won't have to take birth again. So millions and millions of people come in hopes of doing that. They understood, yes, this transmigration, I want to try to end it. So that's a very important basic understanding, is that we are spiritual beings. We're never born, never die. What we do in this lifetime creates 2 things. One is karma. Some of it's good karma if we're very helpful to other people and, you know, and we don't hurt anybody. That's good karma. And that'll mean we get a better life in the next life. Or we're, you know, even unknowingly, we perform sin, we hurt others. Just like meat eating, there's no need for it. I've been a vegetarian longer than I've been a devotee. I've been a devotee 51 years. So, you know, I'm still functioning nicely, you know. And vegetarian diet is fine. And especially if it's prasadam. This is an important part of Krishna consciousness. Prasadam means the grace of the Lord. And the first way in which you experience it is through this spiritual food. the food has been prepared with devotion, offered to Krishna, it becomes a spiritual act and it becomes spiritualized. And it helps you to advance spiritually, which means to become less attached to material things and more attached to God, to Krishna and serving God. We learned that. So that's in chapter 2, the summary. Now in chapter 3 as well, Arjuna's question, he was puzzled. Because, okay, you want me to give up all material desires and live in a very peaceful way, and but you want me to fight this battle. So how am I going to do both things? You want me to, battle is full of activity, but what you're describing at the end of chapter 2 is to give up vijaya kamans, pumang chadari nixpraha, live free of desires and very peaceful. That doesn't sound like a warrior on the battlefield. So please resolve this seeming puzzle for me. So what Krishna says in the 3rd chapter, he describes that work has to be done in such a way that it's a form of sacrifice. He uses this word yajna. There's one of these key verses in the 3rd chapter where he says, Yagyartat kamanon yatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartam karma konteya mukta sangha paramrajet. Samachara, excuse me. So yagyartat means for the sake of yajna or sacrifice. Now yajna also means Vishnu. Krishna is the original Vishnu. The Vishnu forms expand from Krishna, but they're all God, different forms of God. So Bhakti Yoga means reestablishing our relationship with God, which is one of service, basically, but there's different varieties of that service. It can be as a friend. You're serving Krishna by playing with him in Goloka Vrindavan. Very advanced understanding. That's the ultimate goal. But it means that realizing our intrinsic nature, our dharma, as eternal servants of God and part and parcel of God. Krishna says, Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loke. All these jivas, living entities in this world, are my angsha. And he says, I am the seed-giving father of everyone. We have that relationship, but we've forgotten it. And so we establish these artificial relationships in the material world, which are temporary. We want to have this permanent, loving relationship. We want to live forever. We want to be free of all of this suffering. But it can't happen in the material sphere because it's constantly changing. The nature of this world is that it's always, time is controlling it. Krishna says in the 10th chapter, Mrityu sarva haraschaham. As death, I take everything away. You see? He says, as the bodies of water, I am the ocean. He says these things. This is a vibhu, all his vibhutis, his powers. So we don't want to serve Krishna? Okay, we don't have to. We have free will. But we'll eventually see him in the form of death. All-powerful death, taking everything away. All our fame, our money, our relationships, everything will be destroyed. It's a very frightening prospect. Because that's what we identify with. That's me. Now you're taking it away, I'm just totally depressed. But actually that's happened so many hundreds of times already. So Krishna consciousness means to live our real identity as spiritual beings, to discover what that is. And in this age, the most practical way of rediscovering that is through the chanting of the mantra, especially the Maha Mantra. And it's all very, it's mystical. It's beyond what we ordinarily think of the laws of nature. How this sound can have such a profound effect on one's intelligence and being that you become interested in finding out where is this coming from? Who is Krishna? And he's speaking here right to us. So this chapter 3, he's teaching us how we can begin to work in this world and get closer to him. And Arjuna, near the end here, he says, because Krishna is saying, well, you should act in this way and act in that way. And Arjuna says, well, what is it that seems to force us to act in the wrong way, against our own interests? A perfect example is smoking. I mean, now fewer and fewer Americans smoke, percentage-wise. Finally, the message is getting in. It's not worth it, But when I was growing up, say, let's see, I think 1960 or so, I was turning 14, 15, And some of my friends already began smoking. I'm talking just cigarettes now, And so I said, okay, I better get used to it, if I want to be part of the in crowd. So I went out in the park and I started smoking and coughing and smoking. You have to do this, And then gradually, okay, so then I had my pack of Marlboros. Everyone smoked Marlboros, you know. So there I, you know, luckily I didn't, you know, get 2 packs. I was smoking maybe a half a pack a day, you know. But it wasn't good for me. And if I kept doing it through my whole life, you know, it has a very deleterious effect. And after some time, you know, it became such a scandal because all of the big cigarette companies were paying off the doctors to get on TV and say, well, it hasn't been proved yet, you know, completely that cigarettes are so harmful, you know. It's corruption. But anyway, obviously I gave it up when before I became a devotee, actually. But it's everything in the material world that we become attached to in this way to try to eke out some pleasure. It's not as obviously bad for you as cigarettes, but it has the same effect. It affects you become attached to it. You have some pleasurable experience and you want to do it again and again and again. If you're frustrated in doing it, then you become depressed, you become angry. Who's stopping me from enjoying? Krishna describes that, the progression. You become attached. Dhyayato vishayan pungsa. A human being who meditates or focuses on some object of the sense develops attachment for it. If it's in a third, obviously we experience that. And that attachment, if you pursue it and you try to enjoy it, becomes really strong desire to enjoy it. This is kama. Now kama, you know, lust in English usually means sex desire, but this doesn't just mean sex desire. Kama means any powerful desire to enjoy the senses, any one of the senses. So he's describing now in chapter 2. You develop the sangha, attachment. Sangha sanjayate kama. And when that attachment becomes stronger, it's called kama, very strong desire to enjoy. And when that's frustrated, as it generally must be eventually because of the time factor, you become angry. Who's stopping me from enjoying? You know, become very angry. Kama krodha vijaya. Krodha bhavati sangmoha. Now in that angry state, you can lose your whole intelligence and do something that you regret for the rest of your life. You know. So there says, krodha bhavati sammoha, you become bewildered, and by that, if it continues, sammoha smriti vibhrama, you forget who you are, this is my brother, why am I strangling him? You know, you forget. Sammoha smriti vibhrama smriti brangshad, when the memory is destroyed, buddhi nasha, the intelligence becomes destroyed. And when the intelligence is finished, you fall down again in the material pool. So what's the antidote? The next verse tells us how we can avoid this syndrome, which is just what happens all the time in the material life. So he says, raga dvesha vimuktais too. Now raga means attachment, dvesha means aversion. Both of those are two sides of the same coin. Any strong aversion is also a kind of a conditioning for the soul. So we're meant to go through life tolerant. You know, to be equipoised, even in pleasant and unpleasant things. This is a kind of strength. If someone can go through difficult situations and not be completely freaked out and disturbed, that's a good quality to have. So Krishna says that this is possible in this verse he's describing. Raga dvesha vimuktais, being free from attachment and aversion. Even as you're moving amongst the objects of the senses. It's one thing to be sitting off in the Himalayas somewhere in a cave and saying, yeah, I'm detached, because you're 1,000,000 miles away from the object of the senses. But if you're walking around in a big city, you know, and there's all of these things going on, and you're not attached, and your mind is still fixed on transcendence, then that shows spiritual advancement. Now the example, it can be in a kirtan. You know, everyone knows the Hare Krishnas. We go out on Harinam on the street, right? That's a big thing. So we're coming up on New Year's Eve, and you're all invited. We're going to do a big kirtan downtown in the gas lamp district. There'll be thousands of people there. And now for years we went down and we were always crowded, especially at New Year's, on the sidewalk. You know, we'd stop on the sidewalk, the police would come, no, you're blocking the people, you have to move along. We have to keep moving, you know. But now they block the whole street, the 5th Avenue. So the people can walk there and we can stand on the sidewalk and chant, you know. So you're all invited to come. So one thing that happens is you go out and you chant, and there's all kinds of things that are attracting your senses. You know, there's the opposite sex is all gussied up, and then there's all the restaurants, and there's music, you know. But if you're absorbed in the chanting, none of it really takes you away. You can just go through. You're not disturbed by it. So that's proof of the strength of Krishna consciousness. Because Krishna means all attractive. The very word Kṛṣṇa comes from the word karshati, which means to pull. So he attracts all of our senses. He's the most beautiful, and there's whole verses and things describing the beautiful fragrance of his garland, and the sounds, the flute, the beauty and the fragrance and the sounds and the softness of the lotus feet. All the senses can be satisfied, the transcendental senses, in connecting with Krishna. And so, and what happens is that obliterates our attraction to this temporary material thing. It's just not interesting anymore. What's really fascinating is exploring this all varieties of relationships with God, with Krishna. And so that's what the science of Krishna consciousness is about. So Krishna is saying here, now just this verse that we read, the key is the intelligence. Because the intelligence is right next to the soul. There's a certain hierarchy here. It builds up. We have the senses, the mind, and intelligence. And Krishna described that in previous verses at the end here. So the senses are superior to the sense objects. We have active senses, such as the hands, the legs, the voice, with which we do things. We have knowledge-acquiring senses, which is what we commonly call the senses. Right? The eyes, the ears, the sense of touch, taste, smell, these 5 senses. This is how we interact and gain information, So those knowledge-acquiring senses are commonly what we try to gratify. Sometimes you get really hungry and, you want to eat something, and so that's a big one. And all of them, to see beautiful things and the sounds and music, highly developed. So those senses, how do they work? They're under the control of the mind. You see something and the mind is saying, oh, that's something you want to pursue. It's very beautiful, So, okay, you can forget about that. That's not interesting, And the intelligence is also guiding and telling you, well, how can I attain that? And what does it mean? Human intelligence is very important. Because what it can do, if you strengthen the intelligence, and I gave this verse last night, but it's worth repeating. If you strengthen the intelligence through hearing or reading this transcendental knowledge, then you can see, oh, the senses are telling me to do this, but I'm not going to do it. You see? In other words, you're not just a servant of the senses. There's this, you may have heard this term, Goswami or Swami. Goswami literally means one who can control the senses. Go is a word that means senses. Godas means a servant of the senses. Generally, everybody's a servant. That's what addiction means. Is that you become very attracted to a certain substance, and even though your mind is telling, no, this is ruining my life, but the senses are too strong and you have to do it, and even just to maintain your sanity, you feel like, how can I live? It's not even enjoyment anymore. It's just kind of being able to exist. It can become a horror show. You've got yourself entangled in this thing. So being able to direct the senses in the proper way for our upliftment of the soul, that's what the art and science of bhakti is. So what Krishna is saying here in these the last few verses, and let's just read the translations from Arjun's question, okay? Starting in text 36, it's just about 10 verses. So Arjun wanted to ask, he asks, O descendant of Vishnu, O Krishna, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Now, sin means against the laws of nature, against the laws of God, which results in some suffering in this life or the next life. That's sin. It's kind of a transcendental crime you're committing, and you become the victim of it. So Krishna is now answering that question. What impels us? And he said, the Supreme Personality of God had said, it is lust only. Remember, it's not just sex desire, but any powerful desire to enjoy. It is lust only, Arjun, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, very powerful anger, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So this introduces the different modes I want to get into now, but there's mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. And especially the mode of passion means a very strong desire to enjoy the senses and the mind. That's the mode of passion. The mode of ignorance means, oh, I can't, I just want to go off in a corner and sleep, and then if I can't, and let me enjoy by just taking some intoxication and getting out of it, and just postponement, you're living in a place gradually becomes dirty, I can't bother to be cleaning it. This is the mode of ignorance, darkness. And mode of goodness means that you're interested in philosophy and things and reflection, and you're not so controlled by the lower self. But here he's saying this lust is born of the mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath or anger, the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world. Then what happens? There's different degrees of this lust. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, so the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. And this is text 38. So, thus the wise living entity, in other words, we're all knowers. We are the knower of the field. We're full of knowledge. But the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by this eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So if you indulge in some strong, powerful sense enjoyment, then you'll be satiated for some time, but at a certain point it'll come back, and you'll want to do it again and again and again. You know, so it's never satiated. It's like a fire that keeps burning if you feed it. Then text 40, the senses, the mind, and intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. So we're in that condition. Senses, mind. So the senses, obviously, you can become addicted to alcohol, say. The mind, you become addicted to certain sensations or experiences, you know. And intelligence means even, you know, a certain kind of literature. You know, you can become impassioned to read. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yeah, the other one. That's it. Okay. So, senses, mind, intelligence, sitting place of the lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. So we can experience that in our own lives. Whether the senses or the mind or the intelligence, they all have repositories of certain desires, subtle desires that we want to fulfill. So now he has therefore. Therefore, Arjuna, best of the bards, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So it's kind of a battle. You know, when your intelligence understands the need for restraining the senses and acting in a way that's for your upliftment, then the lower self is pulling and trying to say, you know, what are you taking this Hare Krishna seriously for? You know, we used to enjoy so much. Come on, let's go. You know, or your old friends say, come on, come to the party. You remember? You know? All right. So there's a struggle that goes on. So he says, in the beginning, curb this great symbol of sin. But how to curb it? You know. So then he's analyzing text 42. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses, intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So now that soul, there's also the super soul. The super soul, Krishna in our heart, is manifested. And he's trying to give us good instruction. Now sometimes that super soul is manifest with the conscience. Our conscience. I want to do it, but I know I shouldn't do it, you know, because it's going to be damaging to me and to others. Therefore, I won't do it. Although I want to do it. This is the struggle there. But the super soul is now coming to us now. This is Krishna speaking externally through the book Bhagavad Gita and through the Acharya, the Guru. Prabhupada is speaking to us through his purports here. And he's quoting, he's giving us nothing but the original knowledge. But he personifies the reality of it, that it's really possible to do. You know, he's a human being, we're human beings, and he's inviting us. And it says, Lord Chaitanya has come and made it simple and easy, so even we can do it. We don't have to grow up in India and in this culture so that, you know, so even in this Western culture we can take part. So then he analyzes it, that the intelligence is higher. So the key is in the intelligence. By strengthening the intelligence, the lower self can be controlled. Evam buddhe param buddha. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental even to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O Madhyam Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So it's a challenge. Just as whatever we want to achieve in this world, if it's something valuable, It's going to take work. It's going to take as a process. There's a path, just like we call the bhakti marga. There's a path of bhakti, which is development of our spiritual nature by practice, tried and true practice. It's worked before, you know. And what's wonderful about it is that even in the beginning stages, you can feel the effect. You can feel the power of this mantra. If you simply, the whole process centers on that. This is the great gift of Lord Chaitanya, who's nobody but Krishna come in this age, modern age, to give us this easy process centered on it. It's not wholly and solely the chanting, but the chanting is like central to it, because it's so powerful. It's inconceivable that the name Krishna, the very sound Krishna, is Krishna himself. That's just so beyond. He said, what does that even mean? That God is present in that sound? But if you try it, if you actually chant and try to hear the sound, then you can feel the presence of the Lord. You can feel the effect on your consciousness. And one of the great effects is that you become less controlled by all the allurements of the material world, and you become more interested and more attracted to Krishna and finding out more about this philosophy. And the prospect of actually achieving perfection. And the wonderful thing about it is in chapter 2, a very important verse, that in this endeavor, Krishna consciousness, there's no loss and no diminution. You cannot say that about anything material. Whether you're trying to make $1 million, $1 billion, or whatever, or become well known, or whatever it is you're trying to achieve in the material world, it will all be taken away from you when you leave your body. It's not that you just die and you cease to exist and it's gone. You don't cease to exist. You continue to be a conscious living being, but everything you had materially in your previous life is gone with that body, right? Well, this Bezos, for instance, everyone knows the Amazon guy, right? Who knows how many billions he's got, So, all right. So all the money he has accounts with his name on it, but it's not his name. It's the name of his body. And so that body is now gone at a certain point. Doesn't matter who you are, it's gone. All that money is still there, but it's not. But it's separated from him. He doesn't have it anymore. Who knows where he's going? He may be a subhuman body. So someone else will get that money. The government will get it, whatever. So that's what you can imagine how traumatic that is. But if you die without any attachment for that, that's why it said, live as simply as possible. Don't go to extremes, but live as simply as possible. What is that verse? Again, kama. Kama sinendriya priti labo jiveta yavata jiva satat prajigyasa noto yashchaya karmabi. This is in the Srimad Bhagavatam at the beginning, 2nd chapter of the 1st canto. And it's saying that one should not engage in kama unless he desires for the pleasure of the senses. Kama sinendriya priti labo jiveta yavata. You have to live, get as much things that you need in order to live. There's food and shelter and, whatever, as simple as possible. The family, that can also be done simply, But, so labha jiva, and then what should I direct my attention at? What should I really strive for? Jivasa tatra jigyasa. One should live in order to inquire into the absolute truth. Who is God? Who am I? What is my relationship? How can I achieve it? What are the benefits? That's tattva jigyasa. Jigyasa means inquiry. This is an echo from the Vedanta Sutra, which is the compilation of aphorisms that embody the essence of Vedic knowledge. And Vedanta, notice that's part of Prabhupada's name, Bhakti Vedanta. Vedanta means the end or culmination of knowledge, of spiritual knowledge. And Prabhupada's very name says it all. The culmination of this Vedic knowledge is bhakti, love of God, love of Krishna. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedaisya sarvar ahameva vedya, in the 15th chapter, text 15. Of all the Vedas, the goal of all the knowledge is me, is understanding me. Vedanta Krit, I am the one who wrote the Vedanta in the form of Vyasadeva, he's an expansion. And I am the knower of the Vedas. So the idea is that all of this knowledge and this experience is just waiting for us. We all have the potential of advancing toward Krishna consciousness. But it all begins right here, in the beginning with controlling the senses. In other words, there's 10 million things each of you could have been doing right now besides this. But you decided to do this for some reason, to come and learn Bhagavad Gita. So that's very auspicious. That's that's to your eternal credit. That's even a little advancement on this path, Krishna says in that same verse, will protect one from most fearful kind of danger. What is that most fearful danger? Do you know, Chad? Oh, maybe you know, Mark? Huh? Not just returning. Losing the human form of life. Yeah, we're all gonna leave this body. The question is, what's the next body? If it's subhuman, it's such a tragic loss. We have the opportunity now, as human beings, to inquire into this transcendental knowledge and act on it, and make advancement toward the perfection of life. We may not succeed, but once you realize you have an infinity of lives before you, you're not dying, and that if you make progress in this life even a little bit, you'll begin from that point next life. You're not going to become subhuman. You're not going to become a tree. You'll become a human being in a situation where you can continue your spiritual quest. And so, of course, the best thing is, well, let's go back to Godhead, back home in this one lifetime. It's possible, but it requires great, serious work, and determination. But the more that we can associate with devotees, chant Hare Krishna, and investigate these books, the more we'll get the spiritual strength to actually follow the process seriously. And it comes, the first serious thing you do is decide I'm going to chant on the beads, a minimum of rounds every day. I'll start with 2 rounds. A lot of devotees start with 2 rounds. Takes maybe 20 minutes max, So it's easy to integrate into a schedule of work, or school or anything. But it's very illuminating. If you just pay attention to that sound, then you understand, oh, this is Krishna, it's powerful. It's just powerful. And I can attest, after more than 50 years, there's nothing like it. The kirtan and the japa form the real substance of the strength of the Krishna conscious movement. It works anywhere, anytime. Prabhupada proved it. Africa, Australia, New Zealand, the Lower East Side. Doesn't matter. If you're a human being with a tongue and an ear and a brain, you're eligible to advance. So we should take advantage of it. So here, the last verse, just to wrap up. Evam buddhe param buddhva. With your intelligence, understand that you are transcendental to the intelligence. Sangstabhyatmanamatmana. Almighty, you should steady the mind. That's a sangstabhyatmanamatmana. By deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness. So the mind is always flickering, taking us here and there. We have to steady it, focus it on Krishna. Jahi shatram. In this way, conquer the enemy known as lust, known as kama rupa dalasadam, which is very powerful, formidable enemy known as lust. So, and then, which we didn't read but it's so illuminating. I remember when I first read it, that kama, that strong desire to enjoy the senses, is simply prema, which has been adulterated and changed by contact with the material energy. Prema is the goal. Prema is the ultimate goal, the pure love for God. That's prema. And so that desire, overwhelming desire to serve God for His pleasure, and in this way enjoy unlimited transcendental pleasure ourselves, you say, that becomes adulterated when it's that enjoying spirit is focused on the material energy. We turn away from God, we turn away from Krishna, and we become absorbed in this material world of duality, and we develop so many different desires, and then we act in such a way that there's karma, and we get entangled. The knots in the heart. So many attachments are in the heart, and when we come in touch with the object of the senses, that attachment draws us to that experience. And so we're planting them. In our material life, we're planting those desire seeds. And they fructify and they just entangle the soul, and we forget all about God. So we need to be in an environment where we're reminded. And the chanting is excellent because it forces you to associate with Krishna in the form of sound. And before long, after some time, you realize it really has an attraction. That's what Krishna is all attractive. That's the thing about Krishna. Every one of us can be attracted to him. And that attraction is the saving grace. That is what really is the beginning of perfection. Okay, I've kind of made a big speech and it's almost out of time. Any questions or comments? We'll start chapter 4 next week. Otherwise, we have a little time. I'll fill it in with a few poems. Did you have the question, Prabhu? Okay, wait, but Nelson, get the... Yeah, because we have people online.
Thank you. At the beginning of today's lecture, we talked about aversion to certain things.
Yeah.
But in weeks past, we talked about staying away from difficult situations and staying away, protecting ourselves from people and protecting ourselves from from certain aspects of society. And so it seems a little bit at odds that we don't want to have aversion to anything, but at the same time we have to put up these kind of, I don't know, we have to,
I can understand.
we have to avoid certain situations.
Yeah. The thing is that the idea of the mode of goodness, the equilibrium of the mind, the peaceful mind, so that we can contemplate on Krishna and we can not be, disturbed in mind, is important. It doesn't mean we have to go anywhere. The impersonalists, they want to go away to the cave somewhere, away from people. No, the process is so strong that we can find, like, this is an oasis. This whole temple compound is dedicated, obviously, to Krishna consciousness. So everyone's getting up here early in the morning, at 3:30, 4 o'clock to make the first ceremony. And the part of the day when we do the meditation, which is mostly like 5:15 to 7:15, we all chanting japa. So you'll see a few devotees here chanting in the temple, or they're upstairs, whatever. And so it's arranged that way because we need that. We need that help, especially at the beginning. So it's not a question of the aversion so much as just a strategy for giving us the best shot at being able to focus the mind on Krishna. Because we're all coming with a certain amount of conditioning in our brain, and we need the best conditions that we can get. So Prabhupada was very eager at starting these temples, which they all had living arrangements so one can actually live in or near the temple. And so that you have the association and you have the environment that's most conducive to becoming spiritually strong. Now, when you do become spiritually strong, you can be anywhere and still maintain your spiritual equilibrium. You've strengthened your intelligence and your mind. So that's not the idea of aversion. Means things that sensual things that you don't like, and are sometimes forced on you. Like Prabhupada, when he went to New York, it was a far cry from where he was living. He was living in this peaceful temple compound in Vrindavan, idyllic, But he had the order from his spiritual master to take Krishna consciousness to the West, preach in English. So when he was 69, he took up the order. He wasn't in the greatest health, so he underwent so many difficulties. But he did that for the greater good, for us, because he knew the value of spreading Krishna consciousness, and because he wanted to fulfill the desire of his spiritual master, the order. And so he comes to eventually New York, and I lived in New York, and there's all kinds of noise, and he's from Bengal, so it was winter time, it was really cold, and the dirt, and there was a lot of devotees, young people there taking LSD, so he'd have to give lectures in the morning, and sometimes they would were crashing from trips at night, and they're all hallucinating. So all of these things he tolerated, to give them a chance, especially certain numbers of them were very serious, and they became serious devotees and carried the movement on. So, but the attachment and aversion refers mostly to sensual things that you like and don't like, on that basis. And that and those dualities, that can be your whole life if you're not Krishna consciousness. You try to surround yourself with pleasant fragrances and people and everything like that. But material life isn't like that. Is that you have to work and you have to put yourself out in the situation, and things happen. You get sick. He leaves her, she leaves him. So that disturbs the mind so much, because you're involved in these dualities. But if you have the sound basis of Krishna consciousness, then those dualities you can easily tolerate, because you have that center in yourself. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare, and it enables you to maintain your equilibrium. So that's what we're talking about. But generally, this Ijta Dvesha, Material attachment and material aversion is what governs most people's lives in the conditioned state. And so we want to try to transcend that. And even though things may happen that would normally upset us, we can tolerate, and we can go through it because we have our center in Krishna consciousness. It's an experienced, situation. So we should, and it doesn't, we should begin the process and try to, chant and read the books and experience the beauty of the deities and so forth. And in that way, we'll get a taste for Krishna consciousness, and we'll see the benefit of it. That really is a wonderful way of life. And in this insane world, it's, devotees are kind. They don't want to hurt anyone. And the great, devotees who are actually going out and trying to give this wonderful knowledge. It's all based on realizing the value of this distillation of this Vedic wisdom that Prabhupada has given us. All right, we've kind of come to that. I don't know what poem I can give you. Oh, yeah, because it's late. So I'll give you this little motto, I said. Two of them. Since pleasure is a dream, Krishna is supreme. The aim is prem, and the way is the name. Every body dies. Nobody dies. Wake up and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. So we'll make some t-shirts of those, I think. All right, we better get ready for our take. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. We will begin chapter 4 on Monday.